Hi guys, it's Matt from Maxon here, and in this simple tutorial we are going to be looking at producing a terraced house. So in another one of my tutorials we've looked at a very simple sort of off-the-cuff house, just being able to produce something to put in the background. With this one I'm going to try and look in a little bit more detail at producing a house that sort of actually exists in. So I'm going to be using a terraced house as an idea. Now, as I've said in other tutorials, it's a really good idea to find some form of reference material. So I've just done a quick Google search to have a look at reference material, and I'm going to be doing something and producing something very similar to this sort of thing, okay, which apparently you can find on Wikipedia quite quickly. So I'm going to load up Cinema 4D, there we go, and I'm going to start, as I did before, by creating a cube. I'm working in centimetres, so I need to just think about sizes of things like that. So the x-axis, they're about, say, 6 meters wide. Okay, and then you're going to look at something like 7 meters long. And then as for height, if you kind of go for 2.5, 5, say maybe 5 meters tall. Okay, obviously there's a roof on there to go on top of that as well, but we shall add to that a little bit later and get those sorts of things working quite nicely for us. Okay, maybe 6 meters across is a bit too big. Let's say 5. Here we go. Nice sort of snug terrace house. Okay, and as before, I'm going to give myself a little bit of geometry just to start with, but I'm probably going to add a lot more to that as I go. So it just gives me a starting point and means that I've got some basic shapes to work with. Okay, so let's get cracking, and we'll start looking at where to put our shapes. Obviously we're not going to do anything to the sides because we're going to have a nice terrace house. So that particular square is 2.5 by 2.5, so that's 2.5 high by 2.5 wide. And that's where I'm going to start by putting my door. Now I'm going to have a door frame. If I just look at my image, the doors have this little frame that goes all the way across, as do the windows. So I'm going to put that in so that I can use it for all of my windows and doors. I'm going to change my layout. Ooh, not change the time. I'm going to change the layout. So I'm going to go to modeling, which gives me just a bit more space to do this sort of stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to use my knife tool. So if I just press M, and the line cut tool is what's going to be useful for me. Sorry, loop cut, L. Means that I can, mosey around here and I can see what's going on. So if that's 2.5 meters tall, if we just sort of go down there, let's just round that off nicely to say 85%. There we go. And that's going to be the form of our window block, and I'm going to need to do that there too, and I shall make that 85 so that I know it's a similar percentage. And then that's going to be below the block, so I'm going to make that 85% of that bit. Okay, and I might do the same here, 85% of that. Okay, cool. So now I can simply select those two and it will tell me over here in the coordinates how tall that is. So it's just over 2 meters tall, which is quite tall for a door, but that's absolutely fine. That particular one is 1.8, so you might have to duck. But again, it's up to us how much we edit and adjust that. I can easily, increase the height of this. So if I just did U to bring up that, which will give me a selection shortcut, and I shall do L. I will select those polygons, and then I shall move them up. Okay, and I'm going for, so that polygon is now 2 meters tall, absolutely fine, and that's going to be the nice sort of block above. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the knife tool again a little bit more to start cutting into these, and so I'm going to stick that at, say, 66%. There we go. And then I'm going to make sure that's at 50, so that that's nice and even. And that's 66. Ooh, not 6. 66. And then that's 50. And that's going to give me some nice little blocks there to start working into my windows. So this is about 82 centimeters across, which isn't too bad for what I'm going to start producing when it comes to the windows. And again, M and L, I think, because I'm going to need the bottom of the windows. So say about there, about 30%, and there 30%. And then I'm going to go a little bit below, which is, say, 66, and that's going to form the bottom of our windows, which is relatively easy to start. So if I simply select that, that, and that, and then extrude those, so M and T, or down here, you've got the extrude tool, and then just extrude that a little bit. That gives the window sills that you can see, and then I shall select that, that, and that, and extrude those a little bit out as well. I can then select the 3 windows and extrude them inner a tad, so that gives that form of depth, so you've got a nice little windowsill. And then I shall use this tool, inner extrude, or extrude inner, to shrink those just a little bit more, and then M and T, or down there, to push that in a little bit further, so you've got the glass plane. So you've got a window sill, you've got the window blocks, and then you've got your windows themselves. Okay, that was quite quick, wasn't it? Right, let's work on the door then. So very similar to this one, I'm going to just use the side view so I can match it to what I've done. Perhaps I should have extruded that at the same time. So just extrude, and then I shall just match that out. There we go. And then, because these lovely little Victorian houses always had a porch, I shall select those 3, and then using extrude, I shall just nip backwards to give me a nice little porch. So it's stepping back about 75 centimeters. You know, I can change that. There we go. Okay, so that's moved its way in. And similar to what I've done in the other one, I'm going to do extrude inner to do a little bit of a frame, and then M and T to extrude backwards to give the impression that there is a door there. Now if you've got a door model, or if you want to put a texture on, that's another way of doing it. We've got multiple different ways of producing that. And there we go, quite quickly we've got our, you know, flat fronted bay window. And similarly with what I have done previously, I'm going to select these. It's probably easier if I paint the selection on and then use Control to deselect the ones I don't need, and then give it a nice pitched roof. So let's just have a look sort of front ways to see how that's looking. It's a bit steep. There we go. So let's have a nose. Yeah, I mean, let's have a look at how big that 2.6 meters. So there's quite a big sort of arc there, which is fine. You know, these houses did have extremely steep roofs, which is quite good. So there we go. We've produced the front, which isn't too bad. Now for the back. So I'm going to just select those windows again that will be there and there, although I might wait until after I have done the sort of extension that they have on these things. I'm going to make sure that that and that those polygons there are left for the windows, and then I shall select the ones that will form the, not so much extension, but the where the kitchen and third bedroom stroke or bathroom is normally. They also really start a little bit further down as well. So I shall then M and T, and I shall extrude that out, and I shall see how much that fits, and say about 3 meters, so 300. There we go. And that is out. Bingo. We now have our lovely little extension. And we can look at how the windows are going to work here. We might need to add a little bit more geometry, certainly to do the windows sort of on this sort of area as anyway. The windows here are going to be slightly lower because they are slightly lower windows in comparison to the height of the building. But I can select these ones anyway, and I can MT and extrude those out, and same as I did before, I select that M and T, and I shall extrude those a little bit, so say about 10 centimeters, minus 10. I can be exact if I want, and then M and W to give me a little bit of window, and M and T to go backwards. Okay, and that gets me there. Right, let's do the trickier bit now, which can be this roof, the way this will intersect, because it won't just stick up and it doesn't just carry on there, it will cross. And the easiest way, I think, to be able to do that is going to be use the knife tool. So I'm looking at the front, whereas at the moment I really want to be looking at the back of the house. There we go. And my extension starts there. So if I was to use my knife tool, so go to the knife tool here, line cut tool, sorry, and then I can hover over there, and that means that that is where it is going to, cut from. Now I can go in any angle, but if I hold down Shift, it will go at 90 degrees. 45 degrees. That's quite a steep roof in that sort of fashion, so maybe I'll just make it a little bit thinner, and you can control what you want to constrain it to. Say if I wanted to, maybe if I did want to constrain it to 30, there we go. If I hold down Shift, there we go. I can now constrain that definitely at 30 degrees. Press Escape, press Enter, and there we go. I have the cutout where this is going to work. So, how do I get this working then? Well, what I would do in this instance is select all of the polygons that are going to go there and press Delete. A nice open top bathroom there, perhaps. And that gives me the shape that will allow this roof to fit in. Okay, so we've got that angle there, but we shall see how it all fits together. I will select the edge tools, and I will select all of these. Ooh, missed. Deselect that one. And I shall do an extrude, but I should do a different form, as it were, of extrude. So M and T gives me my extrude tool. Now its offset is at 10, and you can extrude out, and it will go incredibly funny, which is really no help for me whatsoever. And even if you do it a smidgen, what happens is that it extrudes in weird and wonderful ways. So I've done it in other tutorials, but I do a 0 offset extrude and then click apply, because that creates an extrude exactly where those lines are. And that means I can then move them out to where they need to be. And that gives me a roof that fits exactly where I need it to, which is, really helpful. But I have this lovely sort of wonkiness, which doesn't really help me whatsoever. So using the scale tool, I shall scale that, and then I shall press Shift afterwards to go in nice 10-degree increments, and I shall 0 out, which means I now have a flat end to go with, which is perfect for me. Okay, and then I shall just roughly match it to that end. And I am going to roughly match it because you'll see what I'll do in a second, which will force them all to be in the same position. So using the top view and looking at that point, now quickest way for me is to go to points mode, go to paints, untick visible elements only, because I want to select all of those points. Okay, all the way down. Now if I look at the 3D view, you can see, there we go, I have selected all of those points, and they are at a size of 0.071. That wasn't bad, I was 7 centimeters off matching it. But similarly, like I did, I shall just select that and scale it, which means it's at 0. So all of those points are now matching, and those points are exactly where the other ones are. The issue is that there is still 2 points there. So if I were to just select a point, boom, it's separate. But because they are in exactly the same place, there is a way I can get around that. And that is to Command A, select all of the points, right click, and there's this lovely Optimize button. And what the Optimize button does is it gets rid of unused points. So if you've deleted polygons and you've got stuff floating around that you don't need, or if you have points that are exactly in the same position, then it will create, or rather it will merge the two together without you having to worry. So having clicked that, you won't notice any difference in what you can see. But now if I select that point again, it's attached to both sides, which is exactly what I want. Okay, right, so now I need to start marrying up these sort of holes that we have going on here. And there's a couple of ways of doing that. I'm just trying to have a just nose at the best way. I'm going to, whilst it's a triangle, I'm still going to create some form of triangle there. Okay, so M and E gives me the polygon pen, and this allows me to draw polygons. And can you see that? I simply closed that up and it created a polygon. And I just want to check, did it include that? Yes, it did. There we go. So M and E allowed me to draw the end and it filled in the polygon. So M and E again. If I do that this time, it will fill it, and then, oops, M and D, close polygon, boom. So that isn't too bad. I've got this, so I have an n-gon here, which is a polygon with more than 4 sides. Sometimes you want to avoid using those, certainly if you're doing deforming meshes. For static meshes like this, I doubt we will have too much of a problem, but we can always triangulate it if we particularly want to, and that will solve the issue. Or I can cut straight across and that will solve the issues as well. For example, if I did M and L, ooh, no, I do want M and K, sorry, M and K, I can select there, I could go across, press escape, and that would sort that out. Although I missed, although I don't want to, I've got angle constraint on. Always check your tools. There we go. Boom, press escape, and now I have a triangle, but I don't have any n-gons at that end, and I could sort that out in a very similar fashion if I wanted to. It's not that much of an issue at this point. If I need it to, then I will fix it. Okay? So, there we go. We have our extension there, which is quite nice. So let's start working on this bit over here. So M and L loop cut, because it's going to give me some sort of nice geometry that I can use for the door. So that's fine, just because I like rounding numbers out. 12. That I will have to deal with in a minute when I figure out how wide that is. And then we're going to have the edge of the window and the window there. Okay, fine. Here we go. So let's just have a look at how big that polygon is. So selecting that, that polygon is 84 centimeters wide, which isn't too bad at all, actually. That would make a nice sort of door. Might be a bit thin, but they generally were. So I'm going to create a second line along here, I think. So M and L to give me a line across here, because it will be slightly lower than that window. So that's 86%, and I shall just change that to 85, and I shall do the same up there. Boom. Okay, it looks like an awful lot of polygons, but you know, we're not doing too badly. So let's start getting these working then. So that and that are going to be the top of the window, M and top of the door. Perfecto. And then I'm going to select that polygon, that polygon, and that polygon, and extrude backwards, say about 10 centimeters, because that will give me a door. M and W, say 3 centimeters, and then M and T to just extrude back to give the impression that there is a door there. Okay. I'm going to extrude the bottom out here, so it's going to be quite a low window, which will match the bottom of that one. M and T, and I shall extrude that out. Then this one, M and T backwards to give you the windowsill, M, W, there, M and T backwards. You guys are going to get sick of me saying M and W, M and T, but hey ho, hopefully it learns. And then we need to look at the window on the end of the bathroom. So I shall select that one and that one, which should be its bases, and top, that one, and go backwards. MW, there, MT. Okay. And there, incredibly fast, we have our terraced house. Now, one thing to add, I think, would be a chimney. So let's go to the top view. Now, the chimneys are going to be over here, because that's where the chimneys would have been. You'd have come in, hallway, and then there'd have been a chimney over here. Maybe there's a bit of room there that we didn't need, but hey ho. So looking at the top view, I'm going to decide where I want my chimney. So using my knife tool, I'm going to cut straight across there, which will give me an n-gon, and then I'm going to cut straight across there, which will also give me another n-gon. Again, I'm not too fussed at the moment, but it gives me these two polygons, which is where I shall produce my chimney. Now I am going to do an M and T extrude, which will, you know, create the ugliest looking extrude for a chimney ever, which is very bizarre. So as before, with the polygon this time, a 0 extrude, and then boom, straight up. Then using the scale, flatten, as I've done before. So shift, flatten, straight down. And then you can embellish this a little bit if you want to, so you could M and W and extrude out, but you've got to be careful because there'd be another sort of set of them there. So you may need to move that over. MT up, MW back. There we go. And that will give you some nice little chimneys. You could put some chimney pots on it if you want, but there we have our little terraced house. And technically there'd have been a chimney there as well, so yeah, why not? Let's add that detail. So MT 0, and then I need to move that polygon up, but can you see at the moment it wants to move it up based in that direction, which isn't particularly helpful. So what I can do is, using the modelling axis, I can change to world. I can change its orientation, so it's the axis of what I have selected, or it's the axis of the world. So I can scale that up and then shrink that down to 0%, so that it is nice and flat in comparison to the world. And again, it's up to you if you want to expand that out. It's not really square, is it? Perhaps I should have squared that out first. So relatively easy to do. Select my points and then make sure I've got only select visible. I shall select all of those, which will give me my windows as well, but it's not too bad. I shall scale them, and then if I want to, I shall move them so that the window is wider but the chimney is slimmer. And there we have, incredibly fast, our terraced house. So how to make it a terrace, how to make more of them? Well, the easiest thing I found would probably be to create a symmetry object, okay, and then put the cube in it. And then if we move the symmetry, there we go, you can see that we've got the ability of producing where it is. So that should be, by my calculations, 250, because we made the house 5 meters wide, so it needs to shift one particular way in that direction. And there we have our terrace. What if we want a lot of them? Well then, it's got to be a cloner tool, hasn't it? So let's produce a cloner tool and put the symmetry in it. We probably don't want it going in the up direction, but we definitely want it moving in the X direction. And now because we've added that second one in, oh wow, that was bang on, there is 1,000. We have our wonderful little cloner, our lovely little terraced houses. So just to finish the scene off a bit, we shall add a floor, and we should just put it there to make sure it's just below. And I'm going to give ourselves a nice physical sky. Let's make it about nowish. And as always, you know me, turning on ambient occlusion and global illumination. And let's do a quick render. And we can see what our nice little terraced house has turned up. There we go. Now, it's up to you how you texture it. Obviously, you know, there's a tutorial on how to add different elements to different parts. I hope this was particularly useful in producing that. I mean, you can see now that perhaps the chimneys are a little large, but then, you know, they had a lot of smoke in those days. So I hope this was a useful tutorial on how to build a house quickly like that, and I shall catch you next time.